In a small town in New Mexico, a gentle breeze blew over the quiet streets as children played outside. Among them was 6-year-old Jonathan Parker, a bright boy with curly hair and big blue eyes. He loved to explore and had a wild imagination. Jonathan's favorite spot was the old oak tree at the edge of the park where he would pretend to be a brave knight on a grand adventure. One sunny afternoon, while playing with his friends, Jonathan noticed something shiny near the tree. He dashed towards it, curiosity bubbling inside him. It was a small metal toy, somewhat rusty but intriguing. Just as he picked it up, he felt a shiver run down his spine. An unfamiliar van slowly passed by, its windows tinted dark. Jonathan felt an odd sense of unease but shrugged it off as a silly fear. Jonathan's mother, Sarah Parker, was at home preparing dinner. She called out for Jonathan, but there was no answer. Concern washed over her as she stepped outside looking for him. She felt a knot form in her stomach when she found his friends playing nearby, but Jonathan was missing. "Have you seen Jonathan?" she asked, her voice trembling. The kids shook their heads, and fear gripped her heart. Within minutes, Sarah gathered neighbors and they began searching the park and the surrounding area, calling Jonathan's name. Hours passed, and panic grew. The police were called, and soon the entire town was buzzing with worry. Posters were made, and a large search party was organized. News of Jonathan's disappearance spread, taking over the evening news in New Mexico. As days turned into weeks, Sarah refused to give up hope. She was determined to find her son. Meanwhile, in a dark alley of New Orleans, a man named Frank watched the news on an old television. He lived a troubled life, tangled in crime and secrets. Seeing the boy's face brought back memories he thought he had buried. Frank was once a loving father until he lost his own son in a terrible accident. The pain had twisted him into a different person, angry and alone. One night, while walking through the city, Frank overheard whispers about a child believed to have been taken to New Orleans. A chill ran through him. Could it be Jonathan? He felt a strange urge to know the truth. Frank decided to find this child, thinking that somehow, he could make things right in his life. Back in New Mexico, Sarah continued her restless search. She received a phone call from a kind detective named Maria. Maria had been working tirelessly on Jonathan's case. "We are following some leads, and we believe Jonathan might have been taken to New Orleans," she said, her voice steady but filled with compassion. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope igniting her heart once again. "I want to go there," she declared, firm in her resolve. Days later, Sarah arrived in New Orleans. The humid air hung heavy, and the streets were alive with noise and color. She met Detective Maria, who briefed her on the latest findings. "We have reasons to believe that Jonathan was seen in this neighborhood," Maria explained, showing Sarah a map with locations marked. Together, they set out, determined to find Jonathan. As they walked through the narrow streets, Frank, who had been following the news, watched them from a distance. He felt a tinge of guilt but also a strange sense of protection for Jonathan. Frank couldn't shake the feeling that he was meant to help. One evening, as Sarah and Maria searched an abandoned warehouse after receiving a tip, they heard a faint sound coming from inside. They exchanged worried glances and slowly approached the door. It creaked open, revealing a dark room filled with old crates and a musty smell. As they ventured deeper, Sarah's heart raced. Then, in the corner, she spotted a small figure curled up, trembling. "Jonathan," she cried, rushing towards him. It was indeed her son, looking frightened but unharmed. She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks as she whispered promises of safety. But their moment of joy was short-lived when a figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Frank. "Please, just let him go," Maria demanded, raising her voice. Frank held up his hands, shaking his head. "He didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to protect him," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I thought I could help." Sarah was confused but sensed that Frank wasn't a monster. "You found him," she said softly, still hugging Jonathan. "You brought him here." Just then, the sound of sirens filled the air, getting closer. Detective Maria had called for backup. Frank knew he wouldn't have time to explain everything. "Please, just go, and take him home," he urged, his eyes filled with sadness. As the police arrived, Sarah and Jonathan ran outside, leaving Frank behind, who stood quietly, watching them leave. He thought of his own lost son, realizing that helping Jonathan was his way of seeking redemption. In the days that followed, Sarah kept Jonathan close, thanking every star for their safe return. She realized that even in darkness, there were whispers of hope and paths to healing. And for Frank, it was a reminder that no matter how broken one could feel, it is never too late to seek forgiveness and find peace within oneself.